said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star. Somebody thought of that and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? And what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep and have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is that the sweet sound that calls the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers and me. La da da dee da da doo, la da 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 dee da doo. I can't remember a time when I wasn't aware of Jim Henson. I remember my childhood being a steady, healthy diet of Sesame Street, weekday mornings and afternoons, and weekends was The Muppet Show. Whether we were watching these imaginative educational TV shows or if we weren't watching that, we were watching what we had from Muppet's home video, our own copies of Hey Cinderella, my personal favourite, and Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Or we'd rent out copies of the Muppet Musicians of Bremen or the Muppets Frog Prince. Now, one very special Christmas, my mum and dad got my brother and I the Muppet movie on VHS. Yes, VHS, because screw you, Beta. And we proceeded to watch that every single day. Another Christmas, we were given The Dark Crystal on VHS, which we proceeded to watch every single day. Now, I was a very, very nervous child and I was easily scared. Now, even though The Dark Crystal is freaking terrifying for everybody of all ages, I still watched it and adored it because I realised it was made by Jim Henson, and that means Jim wanted me to see it. And he wouldn't want me to see anything that wasn't good or it would be too scary. So I said, well, if he wanted me to watch it, I've got to watch it. I know. I was adorable. Then what happened? And then it all changed. Now, I took whatever time I could to find out if there was an interview or a documentary or something about Jim Henson on TV. I would watch it and find out as much as I could about him and, of course, his merry band of Muppeteers. Now, when Jim passed away on May 16th, 1990, it became my mission to find out even more about him and his entire life. One particular tribute was a telemovie called The World of Jim Henson. In that, they spoke to Jane Henson, they spoke to Frank Oz, Jerry Jewell, and even some of his celebrity friends like Morris Sandak, Francis Ford Coppola, and of course, Harry Belafonte. Now, in that, I found out that he was a determined, driven man who never really wanted to get into puppetry. He sort of like used that as a means to get into television and film. And despite the fact he never wanted it, he was always encouraging and inspiring his workers to do the best they could, not for themselves, but just to impress Jim. And that need to impress him, even though he's been long dead for many decades, is what drives me in what I do right now. Now, on this exact day, 40 years ago, the Muppet movie premiered in the United States of America. And so tonight we're going to take you through the development, the filming. Yes, Tonight, we will take you through the filming tonight, and the development, and finally, the enduring influence of the Muppet Show tonight. Joining me, as always, in his bowler hat that we had to go back and get because we left it at his home, and we got to Officeworks, and he went, "Oh no, my image!" So, a bigger applause for Mr. David Innes.
At least I have one.
Sassy.
And I have the luxury that not only are some of my best friends in the audience, and I'm joined by my best friend Rob Lloyd, but also joining me is my other wonderful best friend, the absolutely wonderful, multi-talented Christian Bazzari.
Thank you very much. Can we also get a round of applause for our wonderful tech wizard this evening, Caitlin Yoland? Hey!
That indicates she's on lights.
Now, you've already picked up that this isn't just one of our usual one-off tribute shows. It is also a sing-along. Yes!
You sounded so much like a school assembly, singing the school song. It was wonderful.
So this is the part where I've got all this part about you don't have to sing if you don't want to, but you can if you want to, but please do. But considering you sang that entire opening number beautifully, that part's gone.
So I think we should just move right along.
Moving right along in search of good times and good news. Good friends you can't lose.
This could become a habit.
Opportunity knocks once, let's reach out and grab it.
Yeah.
Together we'll nab it.
We'll hitchhike, bus, or yellow cabot.
Cabot? Moving right along.
Footloose and fancy free.
Getting there is half the fun, come share it with me. Moving right along, diddy-dum, we'll learn to share the load.
We don't need a map to keep the show on the road.
Moving right along, we found a life on the highway.
And your way is my way.
So trust my navigation.
California, here we come. The lie in the skyland.
Palm trees and warm sand.
Though sadly we've just left Rhode Island.
We did what?
Just forget about it. Moving right along.
Hey, LA, where have you gone?
Send someone to fetch us. We're in Saskatchewan.
Moving right along, diddy-dum. You take it, you know best.
Hey, I've never seen the sun come up in the west. That might be the Altona refinery.
Moving right along, we're truly birds of a feather. We're in this together, and we know where we're going.
Movie stars with flashy cars and life with the top down.
We're storming the big town.
Yeah, storm is right. Should it be snowing?
No, I don't think so. Moving right along, footloose and fancy free.
You're ready for the big time.
Is it ready for me? Moving right along.
Hoop, hoop, hoop.
Moving right along. Schmidt. Moving right along. Moving right along.
Why are we even here?
Thank you for your beautiful harmony. It helps us a lot. So let's take you back, if we may, to late 1977, a particularly golden era for Jim Henson. Thank you, that was most important. At the time, The Muppet Show was the most watched television show on the planet. So take that, Laverne and Shirley. After 2 seasons, The Muppet Show was being watched by people of all ages in over 100 countries. Jim was at the height of his influence and power, but he chose not to start a conservative news network, but instead make an adorable film. So Jim approached Lord Lou Grade. That's the Lord Lou Great siren. Great had first met Jim Henson when he did a series with Julie Andrews, and this is my Lord Lou Great. And every week we had a guest artist, and we had 120 episodes, and we never repeated one star. Then this is still him. Then somebody told me that there's this group, Henson Muppets, and they do a bit on Sesame Street, and we'd like to put them in it. And I said, if Jim Henson thinks they're okay, it's okay with me. I watched them. I thought they were wonderful. So I went to Jim Henson and I said, I want you to do a series with me. And he said, well, I want to do a series with you. He said he'd been trying to do his series for years and years, and he tried with all the networks, he tried everywhere, syndication, couldn't do it. And I said, you've got to deal with me for 24 shows. He then came back for the movies. So I said, you've got to deal with me for 2. Jim asked for an $8 million budget, which in 2019 money would be the equivalent of $31,422,331.29.
Just think about how many one-off tribute shows we could do with that money.
At least 7. Originally, Jim wanted to direct. However, Frank Oz, Muppet Show producer David freaking Leeser,
Pew, 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 pew.
Lou Grade, and his wife Jane convinced him otherwise. The first ever Muppet film was going to have so many new technologies and so many new techniques. Like legs? Yes, legs! So James Frawley, another Second City alumni, was brought on to direct as a safe pair of hands. Frawley directed the Monkees TV show and small comedy films including The Big Bus and The Christian Licorice Store. The Christian Licorice Store would later be flown to Australia to stand trial. Too soon? Moving right along. Just forget about it. The biggest selling point of the Muppet movie was putting the Muppets in the real world. So before principal photography got underway, Frawley, Henson and Frank Oz filmed several camera tests outside London. Natural sunlight mixed with the Oz-Henson charm made these felted critters come so much to life. The legitimately hilarious improvised camera test can still be found on a tube nearest you. The illegitimately unhilarious takes are kept in a vault, to later be used in an ABC sitcom in 2015.
Exactly. Nobody saw it because it was bad.
It never happened. But of course, after this film, there was always going to be something better to come along. Evening, you look like you could use a drink.
Yeah, I'd like a grasshopper, thank you.
Hey, can we get a grasshopper for the frog?
That's Lloyd. Lloyd the frog.
Innes the dog here. Pleased to meet ya. I'm no Santana, but I get by.
No, it's very nice.
Let me guess. Broken heart, right?
Does it show?
Listen, when you've been tickling the guitar strings for as long as I have, you've seen a broken heart for every drop of rain, a shattered dream for every falling star.
Exactly. She just walked out on me.
Yeah, typical. That's why I live alone.
You do, huh?
You bet. I finish work, I go home, read a book, have a couple of ciders, take myself for a walk, and then go to bed.
Nice and simple, huh?
Stay away from women, that's my motto.
But I can't.
Neither can I, that's my problem.
Really?
Just forget about it. You can't live with them, you can't live without them. There's something irresistible-ish about them. We grin and bear it 'cause the nights are long. I hope that something better comes along.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's no good complaining and pointless to holler.
If she's a beauty, she'll get under your collar.
She made a monkey out of old King Kong. I hope that something better comes along. Still, it's fun fun when they're fetching and agree to see an etching that you keep at your lily pad. There is no solution, it's part of evolution.
Pitter patter of souls, a little feet of tadpoles.
Innes, tadpoles don't have feet.
I don't understand this reproduction thing. 2, 3, 4.
There's no limitation for mixing and matching.
Some get an itching for a critter they've been scratching. A skunk was badgered, the results were strong.
I hope that something better.
Oh, I hope that something better.
I hope that something better comes along. It's not often you see a guy that green have the blues that bad. Excuse me, it's a drink break.
Oh, we're having a bit of a break there. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad we're capturing this on film.
Oh, you bet. I've got it even more so. Just
Oh.
this makes up for the $32 a ticket.
Look, you can't even see his mouth moving while I talk.
Oh, sorry, I hit you on the
Oh, you hit me. No, then we went back home for this.
I know, I hit you on the image, I'm sorry.
My beautiful image. So now I'd like to tell you a story about how the Muppeteers all met. So are you sitting comfortably? Good. In 1955, Jim Henson introduced the Muppets to the world in Sam and Friends, a short-form television series produced for local television in Washington, D.C. Jim performed with talented puppet performer Jane Niebel, who would later become Jane Henson. In the Muppet movie, Jim performed... No. At least not in this universe. There we go. Jane Niebel, who would later become Jane Henson. In the Muppet movie, Jim performed as Kermit the Frog, Rolf the Dog, Dr. Teeth, Waldorf, and the Swedish Chef.
Jim Henson, everybody, right there. Now, in 1961, Jane retired to focus on the Henson children. Seeking additional performers, Jim came in contact with 17-year-old Frank Oz. Now, Oz initially declined to join because he was very, very young and he still hadn't completed high school. But he passed Jim on over to Jerry Jewell, who he'd worked with at the Vagabond Puppetry Theatre Company in Oakland, California. Oz subsequently joined later on in August 1963, and Oz ultimately became Jim's ultimate collaborator and confidant, creating such incredible, memorable partnerships like Bert and Ernie, Kermit and Fozzie, and of course, Kermit and Miss Piggy. Now, Frank Oz in the movie played Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Animal, Sam Eagle, as well as the biker who punches up Fozzie and throws him at the barman in the El Sleazo Cafe. Frank Oz right there.
Now, eventually, Jewel retired from puppetry and moved to become a full-time writer with the Muppets. I never rated much better than a B-grade puppeteer, so I figured I'd better save my job by doing something else. Also, my arm was sore. Much like me last night. In the 1960s, Jerry Nelson started his puppetry career working with Bill Baird, the puppeteer behind the famous marionette scene in The Sound of Music. That's right, when I think of The Sound of Music, I definitely think of that marionette scene.
Yeah, it was like Julie Andrews at the top of the mountain just swinging marionettes around.
That's how Lou Gray got to know her. He regularly performed on Sesame Street in 1970 onwards, and then from season 2 of The Muppet Show as well. In the Muppet movie, Jerry performed as Floyd Pepper, Crazy Harry, Robin the Frog, Lou Zealand, and Camilla the Chicken. Let's give a round of applause there for Jerry Nelson.
Now, Richard Hunt was in high school, and when he was at high school, he used to put on puppetry shows for local kids in his hometown of the Bronx. Now, he cold called Jim Henson from a public phone to ask for an audition, which he was told about, and he went and his audition was so impressive, he was accepted in straight away into the Henson Company. He worked first as a secondary hand for people like Ernie and stuff like that, and he'd do background characters until he was made full-time as a regular member of Sesame Street in 1972. He did all seasons of The Muppet Show. Now, Richard Hunt performed Scooter, Statler, Janice, Sweetums, Beaker, and Richard Hunt is still today my favourite Muppeteer.
Now, Now, Dave Goals was working full-time in an electronics firm while he started dabbling with puppet building after seeing an episode of Sesame Street, a common pathway to stardom. In 1972, Goals met Frank Oz at a puppetry festival, and during a vacation in New York City, he attended the daily Sesame Street tapings. In 1973, he was offered a job with Henson Associates as a part-time, then full-time puppet builder and designer, and then was principal Muppet performer of Gonzo. In the Muppet movie, Dave performed as the Great Gonzo, Zoot, and Bunsen Honeydew. Please give Dave a roll of gold. Round of applause. There he is.
Finally, the last Muppeteer performer to appear did a tiny one-scene cameo as Big Bird. He's not gone yet. Carol Spinney, right there. Now, let's look at the human supporting cast. First up, we have Charles During, who was the ever so subtly Colonel Sanders-inspired Doc Hopper. Yeah. Now, at this time, Charles During was at the height of his popularity in cinema. He'd starred in such cinema classics as The Sting, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Enemy of the People. Now, During had such a dedicated and focused performance and work ethic. He fitted in really perfect with the Muppets, and also had a real sense of understated menace and also the necessary playfulness to be Doc Hopper. And there was also Austin Pembleton right there, who played the lackey with a conscience, Max. Pembleton was a celebrated Broadway star who transitioned in the film with stuff like Catch-22, What's Up, Doc, and The Thief Who Came to Dinner. But now it's time to look at the other stars. So what have we got for us now?
Now it's time for Spot the Cameo.
Did you spot the cameo? There's at least one in there.
Really? Well, can you picture that?
Right, 2, 3, 4! Oh, yeah! Woo! Now, everybody's lover, everybody's brother. I want to be a lifelong friend. Crazy as a rocket, nothing in my pocket. I keep it in the rainbow's end. I never think of money, I think of milk and honey. I'm grinning like a Cheshire cat. I focus on the pleasure, something I can treasure. Can you picture that? Can you picture that? Woo! Oh, yeah! Hey, Christian, take a verse.
Let me take a picture, add it to the mixture. There it is, I got you now. Really nothing to it, anyone can do it. It's easy and you all know how. Now begins the changing, mental rearranging. Nothing really is where it's at.
Now the Eiffel Tower's been holding up a flower. Give it to a Texas cat.
Fact is, there's nothing out there you can't do. Yeah, even Santa Claus believes in you.
Beat down the walls, begin, believe me, beat cats.
Be a better drummer, be an up and comer. Can you picture that?
So winning, picking and a grinning, loaded but I love to jam. Jilly billy giggly, dancing in a wiggly, honey, that's the way I am. I lost my heart in Texas, nothing that's affect us. Keep it underneath my hat. Aurora Borealis, shining down in Dallas. Can you picture that? Can you picture that? Can you picture? You gotta see it in your mind. Can you picture?
You know it's quick and easy to find.
Can you picture? You don't have to buy a frame. Can you picture? Can you picture that? Can you picture that?
Use it if you need it.
Get defeated. Can you picture that? Can you get behind it? The shoe really
way off guard.
That's what they said last night.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. I hope you appreciate we're doing all our own stunts.
All right.
Chris is being very subtle. What page are we on?
Page 11. Thank you. All right.
I don't think they noticed a thing.
How's it going? Are they enjoying it?
For sure, really. The iconic opening sequence of Kermit playing his banjo and singing on a log in his swamp took 5 days to film. Henson squeezed into a specially designed metal container that was only 4 feet high with a rubber sleeve that came out of the top to perform Kermit and a monitor to see his performance. When he was finally helped out after 3 hours, it took him some time before he can get his legs to straighten out again. Much like me last night. You see how long this joke goes for?
Good grief, it's a running gag.
Jim was ably assisted in this operation by Catherine Mullen and Steve Whitmire on his very first job with the Muppets before he went all, fired. Now, remember, before this, no film had ever had a hand puppet act with its entire body appearing on screen. And this became a major plot point of the film, to show Kermit with legs.
Yes.
Those sexy, spindly, twinky legs.
Yes. Now, the second first in the Muppet movie was the iconic Kermit the Frog riding a bicycle. Now, to have Kermit ride a bike in the full body shot, Kermit puppet had to be posed onto the seat and his legs and hands strapped in and attached to the pedals and handlebars. An overhead crane with a marionette system held the bike through strong strings that were invisible to the camera, and they would guide the bike forward. And the crane and the system, of course, was out of camera frame of vision.
The third first in the Muppet movie was the closing reprise of The Rainbow Connection, featuring a crowd of more than 250 Muppet characters. According to Henson archivist Peter Falk, 137 puppeteers were enlisted from the Puppeteers of America.
No, Innes, it's not Peter Falk.
Oh.
It's Karen Falk.
Oh. 137 puppeteers were enlisted from the...
Innes, what are you doing?
I assume they were related. No, okay. 137 puppeteers were enlisted from the Puppeteers of America, along with the regular Muppet performers, to perform. It took only 1 day to film. Each of the 150 puppeteers were given each a number and then placed in a 6-foot deep, 17-inch wide pit. No.
We get it.
At the point that corresponded to their number. Fun fact, 2 of the puppeteers who went uncredited were Tim Burton and John Landis.
Fun fact.
Saved by a fun fact.
Now, Dancing Kermit and Fozzie were operated by Henson and Frank Oz in front of a blue screen, and they were composited onto a separate reel of the stage. And both of these effects of the bicycle and also this one right here were used again and were refined a lot more in up-and-coming and subsequent Muppet films.
The film's music was written by Kenneth Asher and the wonderful Paul Williams. Paul Williams also appeared on The Muppet Show, did he not?
Yes, he did, right there. And Kermit the Frog says he's such a cute little fella, we're going to make him an honorary Muppet. So, I think he's the human representation of a Muppet. A role I've been fighting for all my life. One day, Williams, I will take you down. Anyway.
Williams had previously appeared on an episode of The Muppet Show and also wrote all the songs in the Henson Christmas special, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, all of which are wonderful, 2 of which you may have heard as you entered this evening. Regarding the film's composition for the Muppet movie, Williams said, Jim Henson gave you more creative freedom than anybody I've ever worked with in my life. I said, you want to hear the songs as we're writing them? And he said, no, I'll hear them in the studio. I know I'm going to love them. You just don't get that kind of freedom on a project these days. And the music, I think you will agree with me, has a charm that has long since gone in family entertainment, but if you wish hard enough, you can hope to go back there someday.
familiar, vaguely familiar, almost unreal yet. It's too soon to feel yet, close to my soul and yet so far away. I'm going to go back there someday. Sun rises, night falls, sometimes the sky calls. Is that a song there? And do I belong there? I've never been there, but I know the way. I'm going to go back there someday. Come and go with me, it's more fun to share. We won't be completely at home in midair. We're flying, not walking on featherless wings. We can hold on to love like invisible strings. There's not a word yet for old friends who've just met. Part heaven, part space, and have I found my place? You can just visit, but I plan to stay. I'm going to go back there someday. I'm going to go back there someday. I need a whole bunch.
Anyone need tissues? There we go. There we go. Please take a tissue. The emotion.
You're up first?
Oh, yes.
I was just letting you do your bit.
Yeah, I'm just stuffing my emotion down my sleeve. Because I am middle class. The film proved to be a huge hit at the box office during the summer of 1979 and ended up grossing $76,657,000 domestically, which in today's money is probably the GDP of Liechtenstein. It is the seventh highest grossing film of 1979 and also the second highest grossing Muppet film after the release of The Muppets in 2011. The success of the film gave Jim Henson Productions an opportunity to release more Muppet and non-Muppet productions theatrically, varying degrees of success.
Yes. Now let's look at the reviews of the Muppet movie, and they are pretty much all positive. The film currently holds 88% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with an average score of 8 out of 10, based on 48 reviews. The site's consensus is the Muppet movie, the big screen debut of Jim Henson's plush creations, is smart, lighthearted, and fun for all ages.
Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars. In his slightly strange favourable review, he was fascinated that the Muppet movie not only stars the Muppets, but for the first time shows us their feet. Oh, baby.
Now, Leonard Moulton, film review legend right there, in his annual movie guide, enjoyed the film, said it was enjoyable, but he said the score was pedestrian. despite the fact that Rainbow Connection was nominated for an Oscar.
Who would have thought we'd disagree with a film critic?
Moulton.
In 2009, it was named to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and will be preserved for all time. Much like Rob Lloyd.
Yes.
We're going to preserve him
Now, the Muppets.
in a jar. That was my jar mime.
That's a nice jar mime. The Muppets, under Jim's leadership, went on to make The Great Muppet Caper in 1981. And Muppets Take Manhattan, directed by Frank Oz, in 1984.
Jim was also interested in challenging himself and the audience with what could be done with puppetry on the cinema screen and released The Dark Crystal in 1982 and Labyrinth in 1987. And Rob, your one noise opinion about The Dark Crystal?
4.
And for Labyrinth?
Bulge.
Good point. Good point, well made.
Now, the last project that Jim Henson ever worked on was Muppet Vision 3D, which was a short film for the Disney the theme parks, which opened on May 16th, 1991, and it still runs in Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Now, Jim's influence on you in it.
You're going to call me Jim? You were going to call me Jim, weren't you? I'm honoured, by the way, but I'm not as good.
You are.
Oh, that's really lovely.
Tell us about your influence, the influence of Jim and the Muppets on your life.
Certainly. I was first introduced to the Muppets by this man, actually. He was watching the Muppet Show on TV and said there was something I should watch. And I absolutely loved the Muppet Show. And I think the thing that I love the most about the Muppet Show is very similar to what I love about Warner Brothers cartoons. That there's something delightfully artistic about them, but it's all silly fun. It is there's nothing soppy, and particularly in the Muppet Show. There's some beautiful little lovely moments about it, but everything is delightful and it's full of colour. And in all the shows I like to do, as you can see with my lovely colourful friends here, I got the lovely opportunity to host the Mighty Little Puppet Show when it first was being. Thank you, fans in the house. It was so lovely to continue to just try to be a little bit more Henson, to try to be a bit more delightful and silly and fun. And to this day, I still can't hear just one person without getting into tears, which is just one of the most beautiful songs in the Muppet catalogue. And because I always think about that wonderful memorial service, if you've ever seen it on YouTube, and he is just a delightful person. So colour and delight is what Jim Henson and his worlds brought to me. Christian, what has the Henson and the Muppets given for you?
A lot, but to try and narrow it down, I will quote the late, great Carrie Fisher and say, it's about family. In the sense that I was introduced to it via my auntie in an indirect way. A lot of the stuff that I watched was not stuff that children watched. It was out of boredom because I lived with my grandmother and there was barely any toys and there was just VHS cassette tapes. And there was a cassette tape of Muppet Movie where the introduction is missing. It sort of cuts halfway through Rainbow Connection. And she lovingly edited out to the ad breaks. And if you remember back then, lovingly editing meant you sat there with the remote, with the pause button, and waited. And then when you saw the ad that you thought was the last ad, you unpaused. And
kids these days don't understand.
And then even within the show itself, I mean, the ragtag bunch of Muppets were the most relatable people I'd ever seen in my life. They were all, they all had their struggles that were very realistic. Gonzo not really knowing who he was. Fozzie really wanting desperately to be such a good comedian and just to please people. And things like that made it very relatable for me, and I wanted that family that they had so much. And becoming a performer is how I found it. And here I am today with two other lovely Muppets riding in our Uncle Studebaker, hopefully on our way to Hollywood. Rob, How's the Muppets impacted your life?
Well, the first thing I want to do is a part of this show is also take back the word Muppets because it has been used so much as a negative context in the political spectrum of Australia at the moment by a certain person who was just recently re-elected. So we are taking the Muppets back to mean what it actually means. Because screw you, ScoMo. The influence for me, well, first and foremost, I got to actually go see Muppet Vision 3D in Orlando, Florida, which is pretty awesome. Seeing the Muppets in 3D come at your face like that is incredible. And to see the last bit of work direction of Jim Henson is really cool. I've also had a brush with felt. I've met some people who've been associated with the Jim Henson Company. First up this year, I met Paul Curry, right here, who was out for Comedy Festival this year, and he actually is a huge puppeteer and Muppets fan. He actually worked on the Northern Ireland version of Sesame Street when they were trying to heal all the pain that has been caused there over decades and decades and decades. So they might need to bring that back if Brexit actually goes ahead. So he was absolutely amazing and wonderful performer. His show this year dealt with his obsession with Jim Henson. He was a wonderful person. I also met Craig Sherman right there in the top right-hand corner a couple of years ago at a Jim Henson retrospective at Acme back in 2008, where they showed Dark Crystal on the big screen for the first time, and I saw Labyrinth on the big screen for the first time. Now, I saw Labyrinth on TV when I was a kid and on video and stuff like that, but I never really got what everyone was talking about, going, oh, you've got to see David Bowie. And I went, no, I don't really get it, because when you're watching it on television, it doesn't really work. Seeing Labyrinth on the big screen for the first time in front of a full house, I went, oh, now I get it. It's right there. It's 3D, even though it wasn't in 3D.
The bulge is coming right at you.
Much like you last night. Yeah. Waka, waka, waka. All right. I've also met Alan Truman. Where's Alan? Alan, up here in the top left-hand corner. He's a puppeteer that worked on dinosaurs, and he became one of the regular cast on Puppet Up, which is the improvised puppet show that the Henson Company started by Brian Henson. And I also met Brian Henson himself when he was out here for Puppet Up back in 2007. He was down at the Bella Union Bar down at Trades Hall. He was there with Patrick Bristow, who was the host, and they were sitting there talking, and I was there going, I've got to do it. It's Brian Henson. It's the dog from the Storyteller. It's Hoggle. I've got to go talk to him. I walked up and I said, sorry to interrupt. I know you guys are busy. Just want to say, it's on to meet you. We saw your show. We loved it, and you're amazing. Thank you so much. And I went to turn away. He said, no, stick around. Come sit down and have a talk with us. Have a drink. So
I like you.
So for 45 minutes, I'm trying my best to act calm and responsible and going, so let's talk more about improvisation. Oh, this is what I do. And inside I'm going, ah! I'm all class. Yes, and also the most important thing for me to connect with Jim Henson is on the documentary, The World of Jim Henson, there's a little clip from about the late 50s with Jim and Frank on a show talking about puppetry. And they had this puppet that you could easily take the eyes and noses off with Velcro and create an instantly new character. And I said, that's a way to do improvisation and puppetry. I love improvisation, I love puppetry, let's see how we can combine it. And so from that idea, with a friend of mine, Kynan Barker, we came up with the idea of the Mighty Little Puppet Show, which we've been doing about 4 years now, with some of the most amazing, talented, weird, and most passionate performers I've ever worked with. And so that's my tribute to Jim, is to do the Mighty Littles. So that
We love doing it with you, Rob.
And I love that you love it as well.
Love.
Love. So yeah, that's my connection right there. I was going to tell you, when I met Craig Sherman, he told me stories about Frank Oz, because in this question and answer session, people were asking questions like, there was this woman in front of me, really annoying, that said, we've got someone from the Muppet Show right here, a writer for Jim Henson Company, ask any question you want. This woman was there going, how's Rizzo doing? And I'm there in my 20s going, oh, come on. And then she kept on going, how's Fozzie doing? I'm sure she wanted to know. It was very important, we found out. But I just stood up and said, could you tell us about Richard Hunt? Because not many people know about Richard. He's one of the most amazing performers, and he passed away a couple of years after Jim. And his voice was so unique and so much variety. So afterwards I met Craig, and Craig told me a story about Richard Hunt. And he said, I'll tell you this story as long as you don't tell anyone. Would you like to
He
hear
said
it?
it. He said it in front of the video camera. And
So Richard worked on Fraggle Rock, which they filmed in Toronto, in Canada. And after every single year, they started like moving accommodation to different hotels and stuff like that. But Richard would always ask to be returned to the same hotel. Every single year, every single season they went back, and he'd always ask for the same room. And the reason for that was, even though they were getting more and more expensive hotels, the reason for that was he would get to the same room because he'd stash his marijuana in the vents. So every time he'd go back every year, woohoo, don't have to take that over the border. I love the Muppets. You want to say anything?
I was just going to say that anyone else who booked that room but just put the heating on, it's going to be the
Wow. The most fun you can have in Canada with your pants on. All right. In September of 1978, Edgar Bergen, Henson's idol, who appeared in the Muppet movie, passed away shortly after completion of his scene. And Henson dedicated the movie to his memory. Now, Jim passed away, obviously, on May 16th, 1990. Richard Hunt passed away on the 7th of January 1992. Jerry Jewell, the writer of the Muppets, passed away the 26th of September 2005. Jerry Nelson passed away on the 23rd of August 2012. Jane Henson passed away on the 2nd of April 2013. And James Frawley passed away this year. The director of the Muppet Show passed away this year, January 22nd.
And all of these amazing people are now remembered for eternity in the Magic Store.
It starts when we're kids. A show off at school, making faces at friends. You're a clown and a fool, doing pratfalls and bird calls and bad imitations, ignoring your homework. Now that's dedication. You work to the mirror, you're getting standing ovation.
You're burning with hope.
You're building up steam.
What was once juvenile-ish,
It's grown up and stylish.
You're close to your dream. When somebody out there loves you, stand up and holler for more, more. You found a home at the Magic Store. Oh no! Oh gosh! Oh no! Whoa. Butterfly! It's Queen's right with the Butterfly Club!
Life's like a movie, write your own ending.
Keep believing, keep pretending we've done just what we set out to do. Thanks to the lovers, the dreamers, and you.
Oh, I just knew I would catch up to you guys!
Christian Mazzari! Caitlin Yolland up there! Ladies and gentlemen, we have been here as Lloyd. This has been the 40th birthday celebration of the Muppet Show. Thank you very much. Good night!